So this is an overview of important anatomical structures within the digestive system. So once food enters your mouth, it starts the digestive process. The salivary glands in your mouth are necessary to function in the initial stages of digestion by secreting saliva to lubricate and start to break down the food. So there are three salivary glands shown in this figure, which are the parotid gland, which is the largest and labeled number 1, the submandibular gland located below the mandible and labeled number 2, and then below the tongue is the sublingual gland labeled number 3. And even though the sublingual gland is the smallest, it actually releases the most saliva. So after food exits the mouth, it enters into the structure shown here via the esophagus. So the structure labeled number 1 is the liver, which produces bile for fat digestion. And then under the liver is structure number 2, the gallbladder, which stores bile. And then the long green tube seen here is how bile travels to enter into the small intestine. So structure number 3 is the stomach, where food first enters through the esophagus and then is broken down through chemical and mechanical digestion. The yellow structure, labeled number 4 behind the stomach, is the pancreas, which produces digestive enzymes to break down fats and carbs and proteins. And then structure number 5 is the spleen, which filters blood. And then the tube connected at the end of the stomach and labeled number 6 is the duodenum, which is the first part of the small intestine, where digestion continues through mixing like digestive juices from the pancreas and then bile from the gallbladder. And then the second part of the small intestine is the jejunum, labeled number 8, and the third part is the ileum, labeled number 10. And nutrients are absorbed within these two portions of the small intestine. So going back to structure number 7, you can see the transverse colon, which is the first of 4 colon segments located within the large intestine. And then the second part of the colon, called the descending colon, is labeled number 9, which connects to the transverse colon. And then the next segment of the colon is the ascending colon, labeled number 11. And the final colon segment is the sigmoid colon, which is number 14. So all these colon segments work to store and transport waste products to be expelled from the body. And then just below the ascending colon is the cecum, labeled number 12. And then attached to the cecum is number 13, and this is the structure known as the appendix. So there are 4 abdominal pelvic quadrants that divide the digestive system, and it's divided transversely and longitudinally with the belly button at the center, which serves as kind of a marker for the intersection of each of the quadrants. So in the upper right abdominal pelvic quadrant, you can see the gallbladder, and then another organ, which is represented on the left upper quadrant, is the stomach. And then organs within the digestive system are located in the abdominal pelvic cavity, which is a space just inferior to the diaphragm, which is seen here. And then 3 digestive structures come into contact with the inferior surface of the diaphragm, and these include the stomach, the liver, and the spleen. So one structure that lies directly deep to the belly button, which again is the intersection point of the abdominal pelvic cavities, is the jejunum of the small intestine, which can be seen here. So there are additionally some important organs that are located near the pubic bone as food travels and makes its way towards the exit of the body. So organs that lie closest to the pubic bone include both the small intestine and the sigmoid colon. So many of the structures in the digestive system can also be seen on anatomical cross-sections like this one. So the following labeled structures seen here are part of a coronal cross-section, or the front of the body. The structure labeled A is the liver, structure B is the stomach, and then below the liver is structure C, the large intestine, and specifically here you can see the ascending colon. And then structure D is the spleen, and E is the small intestine, which is shown in multiple parts and in kind of like a twisting manner, representing the 3 sections, which are the duodenum, the ileum, and then the jejunum. So this next diagram is a sagittal or longitudinal, meaning side view, cross-section of a female. So the large intestine is labeled number 1, and if you follow this structure, it leads to the anus, which makes sense because the function of the large intestine is to store and form feces to eventually be expelled out of the anus. So structure number 2 is the bladder, It's white and is seen as wide open because it needs to be able to be filled with urine. Structure number 3 is the small intestine, and the circular makeup of this structure represents the fold that the small intestine contains, which function to increase its surface area. And then structure number 4 is the liver, which you can identify due to its 2 parts or lobes seen here. So here is another sagittal cross-section of a male this time, seen on the left in comparison to the female cross-section seen on the right. So the structures in the cross-section of the males and females can be compared, as there are subtle structural and size differences between the two. So the same organs are shown in both the male and the female, which are the bladder, the liver, the large intestine, and then the small intestine. So the bladder in the male sagittal cross-section shows a much larger space to be filled with fluid, and in general just appears a lot larger. And then the large intestine is also seen as occupying more space in the male than in the female. And then the shape of the small intestine is slightly different in the male and female. Both clearly show folding and villi, but the female shows a more circular structure than the male, and the male seems slightly smaller. And then the liver in the male cross-section looks pretty similar to the female liver and can be seen as having 2 lobes. So this image depicts organs involved in the urinary system, including the left and right kidneys, and each of these kidneys have long tubes extending down from them that connect the kidneys to the urinary bladder. So you'll notice that the left and right kidneys are positioned differently within the abdominal pelvic cavity. So the left kidney is higher than the right kidney, and this can be explained by the position of the liver, due to the fact that the right lobe of the liver is larger and extends down further on the right side of the body. The following is an inferior transverse cross-section, and shown anteriorly or towards the front of the body are the abdominal muscles, and then posteriorly or closer to the rear of the body are the muscles in your back or your vertebrae. So also located on this cross-section are a number of organs. Structure A is the large intestine and takes up a large open space in the cross-section. Structure B represents the small intestine and can be identified by the folding or the circular structures represented here. Structure D and C are both kidneys and can be seen at different heights, again, due to the large right lobe of the liver. There are also 2 major blood vessels included in this cross-section, which are the abdominal aorta and the inferior vena cava. The abdominal aorta is represented by letter A, and you can determine this because the aorta is a thicker walled structure, which is depicted in letter A in comparison to letter B, with a thinner wall representing the inferior vena cava. Okay, here is another transverse cross-section with a number of important organs. So the largest structure here, structure A, is the liver, and then structure B is the kidney, although only one of the pairs is represented here. And then structure C is the spleen, which can be seen bordering the diaphragm. And then the stomach is represented by structure D, and then below the stomach is structure E, which is the pancreas. And then finally, structure F, positioned just behind the pancreas, is the gallbladder. So within the abdomen is serous tissue, and one important category of serous tissue presented here is known as the mesentery, which is formed by 2 sheets of visceral peritoneum. So there are 3 mesenteries, which are the greater omentum, the lesser omentum, and the mesentery proper. So the lesser omentum is represented by letter A on the diagram, and it's thin and can be seen stretching from the lesser curvature of the stomach to the duodenum and then to the liver. B represents the greater omentum, which is a large sac of mesentery and is folded. And it can be seen as located between the abdominal organs and ventral body wall, and is then connected to the greater curvature of the stomach. And C is the mesentery proper, which connects the coils of the ileum and the jejunum and the small intestine to the body. So within the mesentery proper, you can find the superior mesenteric vein, or not the vein, the superior mesenteric artery, the superior mesenteric vein, and the vagus nerve. So a better visualization of these mesenteries can be seen on this cadaver image. So you can see the tissue has like a yellow color, and this is one that aligns with that of adipose tissue, which makes sense because one of the main functions of mesentery is fat storage. And then this image of the cadaver shows the mesentery connected to the ileum of the small intestine, which indicates that it's the mesentery proper.